Welcome to Wanderings and Wool Gathering, episode 105, a chat with Braxton Cosby from Starchild Comics. On whatever platform you're watching or listening, if you like what you hear, give us a review or a comment. We'd love it if you subscribed, and feel free to share with friends. Tonight's episode is brought to you by 4411 Creative Agency. The good folks at 4411 provide custom marketing and flawless execution. Creative is their middle name. Head over to 4411creative.com to find out more. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, the Kokomo Lantern, a journalistic endeavor focused upon the simple principles of illuminating the good and eliminating the shadows in our local community. Join the Lantern Substack to get access to all Lantern material. Again, tonight, we are chatting with Braxton Cosby from Starchild Comics. And joining me to chat with him is JPP. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. We are comic people here, so we're super excited to talk comics with you tonight.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Cosby, where did this whole comics thing start with you?
Yeah, it was crazy. I ended up starting a publishing company for books back in 2000. I think we've been out for about 12 years now. Somewhere about maybe 2000, let's say 2014, I think it was. And we were just publishing anything. You know, we were publishing fiction. We started off with a small stable of authors, and then we did some inspirational stuff. I ended up writing my own science fiction young adult novel and got that off the ground. And then I ended up teaming up with a couple of celebrities. And then they're small following. One guy was a Christian songwriter and drummer, and I worked with him on his autobiography. And then Gail Devers, who is a Olympian, won the 100 meters and world champion in the hurdles. And I was a hurdler in college, so that was a great big fan moment for me because I was able to work with her on her autobiography. So I ended up also meeting the first African-American NASCAR driver. So I ended up having this series called My Life and Story. So we wrote it from like a first person narrative. So it would be something you would probably see in like a Lifetime movie or something. So we got those going, and I met a lot of great authors who wanted to get their books out there. And my goal was to kind of do a friend of the author. You know, once we learn the whole publishing ropes, like we didn't want to take advantage of authors. We wanted to help people, say, hey, I want to publish. And why do you want to publish? So we would actually do interviews with authors and see what they were really about, what they wanted to do with their stories. And we gave people very, wealthy, very healthy royalties as far as the books for ebook and paperbacks, because we just wanted to incentivize them pushing their work. Because, as an author, unless you have a great marketing team, you're going to be responsible for getting your own work out there. So we do, some low-level marketing with, book trailers and set up author interviews and things like that. But it's really on the author's shoulders to get their work out there. So as we did that, one of our authors named Keyshawn Dodds, he actually had this superhero series that he was working on, and it was based on a solo character called Menzuo. And I loved the background of the story was that him and his friend came up with the idea that he would be Menzuo and his friend would be kind of his companion named Solar. And at the time, his friend was suffering from cancer, and he was trying to fight cancer. So they made this enemy in the book named after a cancer. And his friend ended up passing away because their whole dream was we'll start with books, but man, one day it'd be great to do a comic or something like that. And he ended up passing away. But when he told the story to me, I was just so intrigued by it. I felt like it had such a powerful meaning. And then he started giving me the background on the actual narrative from Menzuo himself, kind of this alien who came to Earth as a kid, was adopted by, humans, and he knew nothing about his alien heritage. But over time, he started realizing he had these powers, and then Solar came to visit him and then kind of trained him in this alternate world so he can become this, the protector of the universe kind of thing. So we picked that up and we were rolling with it, and he's gotten up to 4 novels now in the series. But I said, hey, what do you think about doing that comic thing? And he was still like, yeah, I know it takes a lot of funding and a lot of effort, so I'm cool with just working with the books he had. So when we worked with Keyshawn, he had already written 2, so he turned those rights over to us, and we came up with new covers and kind of new logos and everything, and just rebranded the whole IP. And then I said, I think I'm gonna dive in this and start trying to write superhero series as well. Because at the time I had done a health book, I had done the autobiographies with Gail and the NASCAR driver and Mike Clemens, and then I was finishing up my trilogy for the Star-Crossed Saga, which is my young adult science fiction series. And then I dove into this concept of writing the Cape, and the Cape was just something crazy I came up with. I really liked the Watchmen, and I was like, I want a gritty superhero story where it's not about perfect heroes. I wanted people with flaws, so people who readers who might like The Boys on Amazon, and like I said, the series with the Watchmen, who appreciated having those characters who are very flawed but had a great story to tell, and they would really be interested in it. So that's what I did. I ended up writing the Cape, and the Cape is this narrative of Chicago 2035. One day the storm comes to the city, and anybody who was caught in the storm, the next day they will wake up with superpowers. And so you imagine if you give individuals with a lot of issues and insecurities and stuff, and you give them superpowers the next day, how they might react and what they might do with that. So some use their powers for good, and some use them for evil. And you had these 2 groups, the Capes on one side, Dark Phase on the other, and they started just kind of going at it and then killing each other over time. And their numbers started whittling down on both sides. And then finally, they kind of held this secret truce. It was a 6 on each side. Said, hey, you guys go your side, we'll go to our side, and that'd be it. Well, if people like me or you, Steve, kind of came out one day and was like, hey, I got superpowers, then you would be approached by either side. And they said, well, do you want to use this for good or bad? And if you make a mistake and say the wrong thing and the wrong person approach you, they would kill you on sight just to keep those numbers down. So the city eventually adopts the superheroes and is like, hey, we're going to make you guys like celebrities. We're going to put you up in high rises, give you endorsements, take care of you guys as long as you just continue to protect the city from crime. So crime really dropped down low. And then the one rule that they couldn't break was that they couldn't kill a human being. So in our world of heroes, we call them supernormals and normals. So humans would be normal, and supernormals would be people with special powers. And one day, the most powerful superhero in the on the Cape side actually comes on live TV and admits to committing the murder of a hero, of a normal. And so that creates this massive manhunt where you've got Dark Phase trying to hunt him down because they want to recruit him because they think he's turned to the evil side. And you got the Capes trying to hunt him down because, he's messing up their livelihood now. So they want to kill him. And you've got the authority trying to bring him to justice. And so it kind of turned into a mystery whodunit. And that was the first book of the series, which is The Cape. Let's see if I can get that without a glare. And so the tagline on this one is, in a city of masked heroes, darkness hides the truth. So people aren't just hiding behind, an alias. They're actually hiding behind their flaws and some of the things that they have that are probably really unfavorable as far as you talk about what a true hero is, and they hide behind the capes. And that was another rule, is that you had to wear a cape so people identified you as such. So have a little bit of a mix of a love story in there as well, with the main hero and named Paladin, and his long loss of love, who he's always wanted to be with for the longest time, and she's kind of a troubled character, and that was a Cheetah Girl. So this whole story arc starts, and then when that story ends, it picks up in Cape Overdrive, which is the sequel to the first book. And you see Thief, who is the most powerful hero. Like if you get within like 100 yards of him, he can actually absorb your powers and become just like you. He doesn't drain you, but he mimics what you can do. And you got Paladin over here with the super suit. And then you've got Blur, who's the speedster. That was basically Cheetah Girl kind of advancing into her next phase of her power. So I wrote that. I got the first 2 books done, and then we had recruited a couple more writers at the time. We had Daniel Payton with his series, the Bark series, which came out, and then we had Lawrence St. John with Metatron. So we had this nice, rich storyline of superheroes, and we ended up having. Now we were up to like 16 novels that we published for superheroes. So we were like, man, like, what's the next phase? So the next phase, what was natural to me was, let's kick off this comic thing. Let's see what we can do with a comic. So everybody kind of had their own storylines. And then we also had another author named Kyle Champion who wrote the Majesties of Canaan story, which is like 7 superhero team that is that finds this substance called oromite, which is invincible, and they can make weapons out of them, and it forges on their body as well, and it gives them superpower. So when we did that, we said, well, let's spawn a superheroes team, which is we came up with Infinity 7. And the first book in that series was called Gods Among Men, where we actually took my characters from the Cape, teamed up with the Majesties of Canaan and Menzuo. And book 1 went out, and we'll end up writing. We're working on book 2 now for that team up. And then books 3 and 4 are going to actually bring in Metatron and Bark and some of our other characters who we have other authors are working on as well. So we're just kind of going phase by phase. But when we decided to do the comics, we were saying, hey, let's branch off. Your comic will not be something brand new. It won't be a retelling of the story, but it's going to be another a road from that storyline, that story arc. And that's where I came up with the Cape Hellfire. So that takes place right at the end of Infinity 7 book 1. So the Cape picks up right then. And then Menzuo actually picks up right at the end of Infinity as well. But really, from the Metatron book 4, it's the Warrior's Way. So that ended up being where his book picks up. So you see some of the characters that you see on the cover here are also featured on that big wide image you showed earlier, Steve, with the wraparound cover, which it's a wraparound comic. If you go back to yeah, there it is. So that was a wraparound cover, which I thought was just amazing, because I've seen some of the X-Men have done that over the years as well with these wraparound covers. So front and back, you'll just have this whole beautiful image of all the heroes and some of the enemies on the front of it. So that's where we are right now. We've got these 4 comics coming out. We got that Kickstarter that was funded. Back in October, we got it funded. We started it in July. We did it for 2 months because it was our first time doing a Kickstarter. We didn't really know what kind of window we needed, but we got it all done in September, and it was funded by October. So we've got some amazing artists who are working on everything. All the authors wrote all the scripts for the comics, because obviously we wanted to make sure that all of that was congruent, that the storytelling came right from the creators and the authors of the books, so that we didn't miss anything. And we ended up recruiting some artists from really, Brazil. We've got some people from Atlanta, which we're based out of as well. And they're doing a masterful job with the images. So the authors and the artists are working hand in hand. So we've got Menzuo and the Cape are already completed 100%. As you see, I have the comics in my hand. And Bark is right around 80%, and Metatron's right around like 60. So all of those will be completed at the end of this month, so that we'll be officially kicking them all off and have them available for sale in April. So really, really excited about that. And of course, I've already got like 6 comic conventions lined up this year that we'll be making our premiere as with our imprint, Starchild Comics, which is the imprint it's our comic imprint under the Cosby Media Production publishing company. So, we got all of our characters. Well, not even all of them. That's just probably about half, because we don't even have the Majesties of Canaan on there. But yeah, so we're really excited. We're going to get a chance to be visible, get out, meet people, and then we'll have bundles where you can, pick up like the Metatron book 1, Menzuo book 1, Menzuo book 2, and Menzuo book 3 and 4, along with the comics. So we'll have packages for that. You can also get Capes book 1, 2, and 3 with Infinity 7. So we're really thrilled because we just want to get stories out there. We want people to just get involved and see our connected universe that we've come up with. All of our characters are kind of reference one another in their books as well. So how Marvel has that, the MCU, and DC has the DCEU. We have our CMP DSU, which is the Cosby Media Productions dedicated superhero universe. So we're just excited. Anytime we can come out and meet people face to face, talk about the stories we have, and introduce these characters that we have a chance to come up with. I mean, it's, it doesn't get any more exciting than that. And I'll be at Atlanta Comic-Con this Friday, the 18th of March, where we'll be at least debuting the Cape in Menzuo. So, we're just thrilled and we're ready to hit the road and get things going.
Very good. That was a lot to unpack. Yeah, this is a lot of info. So you just to be clear, the books that came before, are those prose novels? Prose, like
novel, yep. These are full-fledged novels. I mean, you've got this is chapter books, everything. All of that is in this. So yeah, these are full novels. So they're not graphic novels. These are actually real stories. So you're gonna get a full 200, 300 page novel of a superhero storyline.
Okay, good. I was curious because I talked to Mundy about this, but as we were reading those stories, it felt like there was a story behind it, like we had jumped in midstream. So that totally makes sense that all these stories happened before the ones we read happened.
Right. And if you notice, what we did is it's about marketing, right? So, okay, we got these comics. We don't want to read, you've really got 22 pages to tell a story. You don't want to waste a lot of that trying to tread in the past. So we wanted to kind of make it a forward reading comic. And at the end, we put that one page in the back of the comic that actually has the QR code, and it has the novels. It says, catch up with the origin stories, in the Cape book 1 and 2 and Infinity 7. Those are on the last page of the comic. And there's a QR code. So if people really dug the comic, they can just scan it with their phone. It'll take them to our website, and they can actually purchase those books. There'll be links even to Amazon too if they wanted to get the ebooks as well. So there's an opportunity just to kind of dive back in and figure out everything. So we're using the books really to say, hey, look, this is the visual representation of the story we've been telling for years. And now here's an opportunity. If you're a comic fan and you just love that, you can go back and grab all those origin stories so you can be caught up on, how did we get to this point? But we tried to, I know it was something very, a challenge that I had to be very direct with how do you tell this story without losing people, So in the storytelling, there's a lot of elements that kind of, it's a little bit of the narrative to take people to say, here's where we are without having to be on the nose, So the exposition is more like just pulling you along. And as you keep reading, you keep going, oh, well, they're there. And it still gives you, but at the same time, with that balance of giving you the hunger of wanting to go back and jump into the old story just so you can catch up,
What is the website to get those? I'm going to run it across the screen here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I pulled it up. It's if you go to CosbyMediaProductions.com/store, it'll take you to the page where you can buy. Actually, my books are in there: the Capes 1, 2, and 3, plus Protostar, plus my Bounty Hunter series. Steel Rain is in there, but also the 2 comics for the Cape and Menzuo. Those are actually on there as well.
Okay, very good. So obviously, if you're getting into this venture, you probably were a comics fan beforehand.
Absolutely.
So what is or what are some properties that you dug that really got you going on this?
Always been a huge X-Men fan, and Fantastic Four. Those are my 2 favorite team ups. I was also, oddly enough, a fan of Alpha Flight, which is not a real popular comic team, but I just thought they were the coolest thing with Puck and some of these other guys. I just like characters who have dimensions. As a writer, they say a lot of times if you really want to capture an audience with the way you write, like a villain or even a hero is to give them a cool silhouette. If you can imagine that character, if you turn they were just black and there was a white background, you saw their silhouette, that's when you created something very interesting. So I just liked all the dimensions of all those characters from those series. And so my favorite being, I was a huge Wolverine fan with the X-Men. I also loved Colossus too. I thought he was like really cool with the metallic body and everything. So that was my X-Men. That was my Marvel fandom. But I grew up in the 80s where we used to have, I don't know if you guys remember the Sunday Funnies, the TV show. And most things were like DC, like they always had a lot of DC stuff on the Sunday Funny. So I looked at that and the Super Friends cartoon. So I was a huge DC fan as well. So Batman was my guy, still is today. So I use a lot of inspiration in writing these very complicated characters who end up really like, they hide behind the alias, of who they are in the real world, really. But the other character is the one who's really coming to the forefront and the ones you connect with. So I think the more complicated I can make the hero, the more you can raise the stakes in the storytelling of what they're trying to accomplish. And the easier it is for readers to connect with them and go with them on this journey as they kind of always, you're getting a character from point A to point B in writing. And along the way, you have all these shortfalls. I'm trying to accomplish this. There's a complication, can't do it. How do I reroute and try to get back on again? I fall again until you get to the climax. And then you have the, the new world order of how things are. So when I write, I really try to bring that out in the characters. And with the comics, it was a whole new venue of writing, which was just exciting to me because it's a challenge to get in 22 pages. I'm trying to get this story completed. Not so much because obviously there's a series within a series. So Cape Hellfire is going to be like 3 or 4 comics in this whole series. So it obviously doesn't end with that comic, but I've still got to tell a complete story of the piece of that story within those 22 pages. And that's complicated because all you have is panels and you have a little bit of narrative. You don't want to crowd the pages with all the dialogue, but you want to give people action too. So how you just keep pulsing the reader through the comic is a great challenge. But as a writer, it's something that just made me even more and more falling in love with storytelling.
So I just posted a comment on the screen. This is from Seanhilton. He's the local comic shop owner, Comics Cubed, here in our town.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to know from you, in the world of comics, which writer has influenced your writing the most?
I've done a lot of reading with comics. And like I said, my fandom comes with Batman. I was a huge fan of Bob Kane. And then also, I know Stan Lee was like the creator of a lot of things. He didn't do that much writing per se, as far as like going series to series, but he initiated the narrative of a lot of storylines. And I loved what he did with X-Men and storytelling, where he kind of paralleled it to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, as far as the characters of Magneto and Professor Xavier. So I liked what he did with it, and also Jack Kirby with Black Panther. So those are kind of like the glue of, I like a narrative that it speaks to something that's real world and that's relevant to where we are in the times. And I think that they did that. They kind of they had these characters, but they reflected what was going on in the times that they were writing, so that people can really kind of live in that world and almost imagine like, wow, here we are. So when I was diving into the Cape, I'm like, well, Chicago's got awful crime, but what would it look like in 2035? It's probably even worse, And a good buddy of mine was from Chicago, so I got a lot of things about the addresses. Like, hey, I'm in this area. Where would it be if we were talking about, a dock? Where would the docks be? He's like, oh, that's gonna be down on such and such, by the lake. And then so I was getting a lot of information from him to kind of plug into it. So
I noticed there are some parallels in your story. So what were some of the current issues that you want to address throughout your story?
what I did with in this story, in the Cape Hellfire, the storyline was really about Paladin trying to find what happened to Blur. So something happens to her at the end of Infinity 7, and he really was kind of giving up on everything. And that's why that opening sequence is like with him just kind of holding the ring. He was going to propose her, something happened to her, and he never got a chance. And then I had a little bit of overlap, which was I thought was cool, with the Star-Crossed Saga, the main character William, through his trilogy, he had to travel back in time. And so in the Infinity 7 book, there's a lot of other characters in there who can actually kind of, because you have a portal jumper and you have speedsters, that's all kind of mixed with time. So they started getting some of these premonitions and this communication of somebody from a distant place communicating, and that ended up being William during the Prince Bounty Hunter. So he actually comes to Paladin and is like, hey, his name is Sebastian. Says, Sebastian, I think I might know where Blur is and how you can get to her. So he kind of pulls him in, gives him the narrative to the story, and it's on this wild whim of, hey, let's just try it, So those were the that was what pushed that story forward, is, hey, let's go into this other realm, where they ended up fighting this very powerful celestial being named Ghazi. So we're going to pick up from there with incorporating these celestial beings that end up they're first introduced in Infinity 7 novel, and it's carried out a lot of which is picked up in the Majesties of Canaan, because that's where the portal jumper is from, and if he can imagine space-time continuum anywhere, he can jump a portal there. So he's starting to slowly master his powers and actually realize how strong he really is, because he just thought it was just about going from one point A to point B, but realizing in a time continuum, point A and point B could actually be in the same place. So that's really where my narrative went, is I wanted to explore getting these celestial beings to kind of come into the fold, and then we'll reintroduce that again in Infinity 7 book 2, and then I'll jump back again into Cape Hellfire to keep that narrative moving.
Talk a little bit about your world building. I mean, it's one thing to have an idea, but you have to flesh out this entire world,
Right.
Create these little intricate problems you're talking about. Did you do that with that team, Mr. Dodds and I can't remember the other guy's name? Yeah, did you do that with them as a group, or did you kind of stick to your own individual books and then try to link them up later?
Yeah, when we first set off, we started figuring out, like, okay, like I said, Keyshawn was the most established. He already had all of his stuff written from 2006, so he was bringing out a board. And since we were rebranding him and kind of restarting the story, it was just a matter of, okay, guys, let's talk. What time window would we be in right now? And we all kind of agreed on 2035. It was just random, maybe 15 years in the future, and we really started putting this together. And so we started adding in parts of the book where we're kind of referencing one another. So then there's a whole scene in Infinity 7 where they do kind of collide, like my heroes with his heroes, and they're kind of fighting and figuring out who's on what side. And then the world building really was about these amazing story arcs, because with Menzuo being from another planet, he's pretty much an alien. So it's become almost like this sci-fi story in outer space of his origin and him traveling back to Earth and some of the team members that he recruits along the way. And then the Cape is just, futuristic Chicago 2035, not too much, but some things that you might imagine would be going on. It wouldn't be, I didn't have flying cars or anything, but just some of the technology with 3D printing and things like that would be in there, holograms and whatnot. A lot of the world building that we do as writers is really the setting. You've got to talk about technology. You've got to talk about locations, what kind of industry we're dealing with, if you're in a rural area versus built up cities and things like that. And then what's relevant. The Cape really dealt with I took it back to dealing with mob bosses in Chicago, The only thing I don't talk about is pizza, but trying to make that authentic to what you would expect in Chicago. is really what I was able to pull in with some of the world building there. And, vehicles and the way that these guys are transported around, all of those settings, I tried to be as authentic as possible to where we were as far as the storytelling is concerned. And I think once people are kind of transported into that setting, then they get a good feel for it. So there is quite a bit of building up the environments. But in my experience with writing, I really realized that even the most successful stories that you have, Lord of the Rings is great, Game of Thrones is great as far as the worlds are concerned, but it's about those characters. So a lot of my stories and the authors as well is really character driven first. What are the stakes? What are the things that are going to connect you to that character? I always say you need like an anchor. As fantastic as a superhero may be, what's that anchor that humanizes him? Because that's where we're going to be connected. I think if the best example I've come up with recently was something like The Mandalorian. Guy behind a helmet, you really have no connection to him early on. But when he finally gets with Grogu, Baby Yoda, he's immediately humanized because now he's got this child, and most people can understand that relationship, either a mentor or a father to a child. And now you're really connecting with him, especially because he's taken on this mantle a little reluctantly in the beginning, but now he's actually accepting it. So now everybody's connected to him. And as much as I think John Favreau may have wanted to try to leave Grogu in the dust, the success of that story is solely based on the fact that we've made that human connection with the Mandalorian. So I think continuing to break down the characters in my story to say, yes, they're super, but man, they've got some issues, especially with Blur in her history. She was actually a call girl, and was actually having an affair with a man, and she ended up being detached from that. And she just kind of feels like she's never been worthy enough to be with a good man, which is basically Sebastian, who's, he's gotten very successful off of technology. His uncle invested in him in college, and when he got out, he started using technology to get money. And so he became a millionaire. And now with this money that he's got, he's decided, hey, I'm going to throw my name in my hat in the ring to be a superhero. So he's come up with the super suit that he has that has four variants of the three variants of strength, stealth, and speed. The fourth variant is really where everything just became automatic, where if he just thinks it, the suit will change. So we kind of count that as the other variant because it's assimilation is what would be the variant of the suit at that point. And then him investing in the technology, he actually, with the capes being in the city, we mixed in reality TV. So we imagined if we had the drones that followed the capes during the daytime, if a cape saves a cat in a tree, that's recorded. If they fight off a mob boss or something, that's recorded because these drones are just flying around the city the entire time. And all their exploits are recorded, and it's uploaded into the city network. And at night, it's a nighttime TV show called The Night Watch. So people are high ratings and everything. So when Thief actually admits to killing a normal, those ratings jump right back up again because these drones are actively trying to find out where he is, and nobody can find him. And then all of a sudden you got this new hero that shows his face, which is Paladin. And everybody's like, well, who are you? Are you a hero or a bad guy? I said, well, I'm still trying to decide. He's kind of playing because he's really being more of the detective at this point. In one end, he's trying to save Carla, who's being pulled to dark phase again because she doesn't think she's worthy of being a quote unquote hero. So he's really trying to shadow her to protect her, and at the same time find out what happened to Thief. So you got this nice mix of reality TV based in this world in 2035 that we all relate to in Chicago, with these three different factions really of dark phase, the capes, and then the authorities. So it's a lot of moving pieces that go on in this story that take you into the second book, which gets even crazier as far as what the stakes are, where the stakes are concerned.
Very cool. Mundy, did you say you had some questions as well? We're getting a little lag, so apologies. Please bear with us with internet. And all this fun stuff.
Sorry, guys. I'm still getting a lot of lag. So my question was, I mean, listening to you talk about all the story points, you've obviously got that totally nailed down. I mean, you're on that. As far as the art goes, you know, starting a new company, how did you guys go about finding the artist? Did you have a style in mind and went looking for people that did that, or did you just start looking for available artists and be like, that style will work, that'll work, that'll work? How'd that go?
Yeah, well, it was crazy. The way it started off is that I teamed up. I found a couple of indie artists who had their own comic book companies, and I would go to these conventions and I'd meet people, you know, and I say, man, I really like your art style. You know, how much is it to make a comic? Because I had no idea, you know. So, and I had some people who gave me some whopper numbers. I'm like, geez, we can't afford that, you know, especially when we want to launch 4. And then so I found a group, Fantasy Art Studios, who had done the Fierce comics. And I was like, hey, you know, can we kind of go into a partnership to get this done? And they were like, yeah, you know. So I recruited them to start on one, but the undertaking was a lot. And as far as our time window was concerned, I met up with Tyler, the creator, who has the Antagonist series of comics, which has now been picked up to work on trying to bring into live action and pitch to networks. And he was nice. He was really generous. He gave me a couple of names of some artists that he liked to work with. And I saw their style, obviously, in his comics. I'm like, oh, this would be nice, you know. So I reached out to them, communicated. And it was crazy because once we went into social media and just started just posting some things, I mean, artists just came at us, you know, like DMing me like, hey, I do this, you know, what's that? And I started learning the language of comics. Say, what's your rate? What's your rate for inks and pencils? What's your rate for colors and lettering, you know? And then, I mean, there's people now in my DM, I don't have work for them. There's so many people like waiting, you know? So what we did is that we started contracting the artists who had the style that we liked to at least work on these comics. And we have a guy named Bruno who worked on the cape for me. And Bruno is just fabulous. He did, and he's out of Brazil. And he worked on the cape for me. And then we brought in Marcelo Salazar, who's actually doing both Menzuo and Metatron. And then I've got another young man who's come on named Daniel. And Daniel is going to be working on my cyberpunk story that I'll be writing towards the end of the year, which is a bit of a spinoff from the Star-Crossed saga. So I wanted to kind of jump into that cyberpunk realm. But I am working on a zombie novel now that's going to be released. We're doing we figured, hey, you know what? We're probably the only comic companies out here that have, you know, in the indie scene that have novels. So why not take advantage of that and launch comics with novels, you know, and continue to tell these stories. So you got the people, you know, when I looked at young folks, they would come to the table sometime with some of the comic books we love, and they love the cover. You're like, oh man, Menzuo, that's really cool. And then the parent will go, well, is this a graphic novel? Say, no, it's a novel. It's a real novel. And then the kid will go, oh, I don't really want to read it, but they love the characters on the cover. And then the parent would be like, hey, I'll buy it for you. I want you to read. And the kids would be like, nah, that's okay. And then some kids would. So that's what we were like, you know, let's target them with the comics and get them to really love the comics so much that they'll go back and read the novels, hopefully, and vice versa. You know, if you like the novels, you go ahead and buy the comics. But I said that I wanted to do something with zombies. And I was already writing a post-apocalyptic story that had a version of zombies in it. And this novel I had been working on since 2020, and I completed it at the end of last year. And I didn't release it. I said, you know what? I'm going to try to find an artist who I really think would do a great job at bringing out these characters in a comic. And so another young man named Ram came, and again, he in my DM, hey, I do this and that. And I looked at his artwork and I said, you know what? I think your art style would really fit what I'm trying to do with this Broken series is what I'm writing. And he gave me, I said, hey, here's a test. I gave him a test page. First page of the comic, just draw it and send it to me. And he knocked it out in like 24 hours, and he did exactly what I would have imagined on the page. So I was just blown away, and I was like, man, this is going to be fantastic. So I went ahead and just recruited him and signed him on with a contract. So he's working on Broken right now, and he's got about 18 pages of that done with the black and white inks. And I'm going to have actually Bruno doing the coloring and the lettering on it, because I like to style what he used when we did the cape. So to answer your question, it really just comes down to, I'm looking at my art, because we've grown so much now that I really thought I had just one camp working on everybody. And as people just send me images, I would send it to the authors and say, does this look like something that would fit? Because in my mind, this looks really, really cool. And they were like, yo, this style is going to be great. And we just went ahead and plugged them in. So as we continue to just go forward, we really would love to continue to have novels written. Ask the author if they're interested in turning it into a comic. If they are, then we figure out how we get a Kickstarter to fund getting it done. And we would basically just attach an artist to it so that everything is stylized and it comes out the way that they would like it.
Yeah, Monday, I think you had a follow-up, and then we'll go to Sean's question.
Yeah, my follow-up really is just about the covers of the novels. If that, like, I noticed they look similar to the comics. It's like a chicken or the egg question. Like, did you have the novels written and then do the comics and kind of find the artists for the comics and then have them do the novel covers, or like what came first? How'd that work?
Yeah, when I first did the cape, I was like, I really just wanted a cape on the cover, so I had a art designer. I designed the logo. I had him put it together for me. And this one, it says, above all else, protect the truth. And I have the image of David bending an iron bow within the shield and emblem. And that's really what would be on all the capes of the characters when they first started out. And then by the time the first book ends, there's a little bit of a twist on what happens with the capes and the mandate to wear them. So I really just said, hey, this is about the cape. Let's put a cape on the cover. And then when I brought in the second book, I was like, I need to show people what these characters really look like. So I had another artist who I worked with who really just, I'm an artist myself, but if I'm being honest, compared to these guys, I'm probably about a 5 or 6. So I was able to design everything. I drew everything out. From head to toe, all these characters are my designs, and I just hand them off and say, hey, do what you can with it. And then they give me these amazing images to run with. So all of these stories were written and had cover art already. So when it came to doing the comics just last year, the artists say, hey, send me what you have, And I think in their mind, they tried to best represent what we were already working on. So it didn't look really odd, And I just think they did a great job. So all of it just seems a nice continuum of the art that we first started out with. And people can look, you could easily look at the paperbacks and the comics and go, yeah, this is the same, because I just didn't want anything to be strange. I don't want to have these fabulous looking comics and these novels look terrible, even vice versa. So I give kudos to the artists, because I tell people all the time, we were blessed to have artists who actually drew our comics. I don't call them comic artists. They're actually artists, because when you write a page and you put in 6 panels and you're saying in this panel, top third of the page, top left third of the page, this is happening, this character saying this is the action. And then you're hoping that the artist can read that on a piece of paper and give that to you in a panel, and I'll be honest with you, every page that was turned in, there were no changes. It was like, wow, like you've not even just given me what I want, you've exceeded my expectations. So I thought it was just like definitely, divine intervention to get all that done, because we didn't have a single complaint. And so they kind of matched it. So going forward, doing more comics, it's my intention to continue to have the same artists work on it so that we don't lose it. And I know over years, down the line, DC, Marvel, everybody has their own favorite artists who've given you a different rendition of Spider-Man or somebody. So with us just starting off, obviously, just maybe in this first series of 3 or 4 comics of maybe the Cape, I would want the same artist, and then eventually I might, go another way with a different series just to give a nice variation as the costumes change and the art designs change. We might switch it up.
Okay. So let's go from that to the question from Mr. Hilton. How did you handle the change from writing prose to writing comic scripts? Because it's such a visual medium and you can't spell everything out. The pictures have to tell a lot of the story. So how did you adjust from one to the other?
It was amazing. Like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. I was in college for years and years and years. I did undergrad, master's, and doctorate program, and I never shy away from just learning something. If I get a nice challenge, I like to learn it. So what does it take? So my whole thing was getting into comics. I didn't want to just go and throw anything on a piece of paper and hope it worked. I actually studied the craft. I started getting back, digging into my comics, reading what people did with a page. I also write screenplays as well. So they're all very linked in the fact that, act 1, act 2, act 3. That's it. That's writing. A book has it, a comic has it, and a screenplay has it. Obviously, you're going from a novel, which you can take your time. Protostar was like 92,000 words. So I could take my time with that whole story in the first book. My longest screenplay right now is 120 pages, which is 2 hours. So I have a little bit more time to play around with act 1, act 2, act 3. But when you get to a comic, act 1, act 2, act 3 is 22 pages. How do you do that? So I really needed to know story structure for comics. So I went and read a couple of books, and one that I really settled on, I'll show it to you. I don't mind giving them love. It was this book here called The Art of Comic Writing. And I like to give them love too, because SCAD is Savannah School of Art Design down here in Georgia. So I think they kind of did like a partnership with them. But man, this book really kind of just did it all for me, because you see my notes and everything. They really break down how these pages go. And when you get into the art of writing a comic, it's really a skill set. It's not just, I want the superhero to kick everybody's butt by the page 22. We're good. There is really a structure to act 1, act 2, act 3. Act 1 might carry you between pages 1 to 5. And then from pages 6 to 17, you might be dealing with act 2. And then 18 through 20, 21, sometimes you might do act 3. And then the last page normally stands on its own, which is the annulment, which is basically the flip side of how the world started and where we are at the end. It's like a new normal. So that's not very different from how we write screenplays as well, with act 1, act 2, act 3. And then it's just about what's happening in those pages, how we introduce characters. And what I'm trying to do with the visual medium of comics, which is fantastic, is that, and I'll open up this one. Actually, I sealed it. Sorry, this is my sealed cape. That was my first one that came out the box. So I can't open it. But what I did with the art of the visual medium is I have to control where the eyes of the reader are going in a comic. So it's not just about a panel here, a panel there. It's something so important. The most important thing you need to see is going to be your biggest panel on your page. So every time I get to a new page, I'm sitting back thinking, okay, I know what's going to happen here. What do I need the reader to see? And so my smaller panels might be a setup for when I kind of explode. You turn that page and it's like, boom, oh, this big thing is happening on the page. Or what's these other panels saying? You know what I mean? So I use those opportunities to really guide how the reader goes from left to right all the way down the page, and then they turn to the page. So sometimes I might put a cliffhanger on the end of one page where they walk into a room, and then the last panel is like the person doing this, and then they turn the page, and then boom, something's happening right to you. So you're constantly pushing them through the pages in that same act 1, act 2, act 3 structure. So it's about it's a wonderful challenge, because I've been writing since 2010, and sometimes this stuff can become a grind, but having this new medium to play in and really kind of push myself to develop a skill set that I didn't have before, but learning the craft and then actually putting it together and then going back and reading on those pages going, yeah, this is what I wanted. This is exactly what I wanted. It's quite a thrill, to be honest. It's a little bit of an adrenaline rush. And when I started passing that information on to the other authors and they were incorporating it into their writing, they were like, man, I'm just so excited. Like, this is great. Like, I could probably write comics the rest of my life. I'm like, yeah, I know it really is something, to it. So I don't know. I would just say I'm a writer now. I wouldn't say I'm just a novelist where I was just a novelist before, or even a comic writer. I just love the art of storytelling and the craft of writing, because if you get a very interesting character and you put them in a predicament where they have to solve something or accomplish a goal, and they've got all these shortfalls and these complications along the way, and it may start off small, but those stakes get bigger and bigger and bigger as they go through the story. Now you've got, an audience captivated and attached because they want to know, I've already related that person, I'm connected, and I see them going through this journey. I'm going with them, and every time they run into a complication, I'm rooting for them. So if I can do that in any one of the story mediums that I'm writing, whether it's a novel or the comic or the screenplay, then I feel like I've been successful. And that's really at the end of the day, I just want to be successful as a writer, to have somebody come and meet me one day and go, man, I really love that. What you did in the beginning was great. And when they can kind of bounce those ideas back to you and you can see that they got it, there's no greater joy as being a writer.
So the question then, you've done a lot of world building. You're in the middle of these stories. Is there an end game in mind, or is this true serialization where these could go on indefinitely?
Yeah. For me, I think it's true serialization. What I did with the cape, people say, well, why did you have him get powers like that? Sebastian doesn't have any powers. He's got a super suit. But for the rest of the characters, I basically made this petri dish of superpowered people, So this storm, I made Chicago like a 25 mile city, square mile city. And anybody who's caught in that storm has powers. So there's still heroes, there's still villains still sitting in this city who got caught in that storm that they have not come out yet. So I can continually just go and just pull a new hero out, pull a new villain out, over and over again. And I never have to just stop my storytelling, So what I'm doing now, like in the Cape 2, when things got really crazy, this asteroid that you have at the top is on a collision course with planet Earth. And it's worth $1 quintillion because it's made of nothing but precious stones like rubies, gems, emeralds, diamonds. That's all it's made of. And and it's about the size of a station wagon, but it's worth $1 quintillion, which is the number 1 with 14 zeros behind it. So in a time where we're always talking about war and countries trying to get a one-up on each other, the country that would actually get this asteroid once it hit Earth would actually have unlimited resources. So that can change the shift of superpowers in the world. So the United States actually commissions the Capes to, they know the trajectory, they know where it's going to hit. They want them to go get it. They've built a space shuttle that's strong enough to withstand, to take the asteroid once it hits, put it in the shuttle, and then launch this thing into the sun so nobody gets it. And then, so that's the main story arc. But there's all these other things as I'm continuing to build the characters now. Now, what's the relationship with Sebastian and Carla? Basically Blur, as we're going about. What's some of the issues she's still dealing with her insecurities and things like that? What's Thief doing now? What's he look like now after he's gotten through this whole murder mystery story? How is he living out his life now? He had a family at one point, a wife, and he's got kids, and now he's in the middle of divorce. So all of these things that I think people just go through naturally, and these worlds are now colliding with still being superheroes, and I end up pulling out new villains from that petri dish of this storm in Chicago. So, you know, we got Dame Lightning comes out. She's like this opera singer who's got all these superpowers. She's a villain, and she's really, really badass and cool. And then some of the other characters that I introduced again in Infinity 7, where we seem like we have a villain, but they're young. You know, they're like maybe like Teen Titans kind of age, and they're the villains in the beginning. But what if we can now turn the corner where they're starting to say, like, after they get, you know, defeated by the Capes, maybe they're in the right path for me. You know, maybe I need to go another way. And so a character named Icon, who I have in Infinity 7, is actually going to end up branching off into his own solo comic with a team of other young heroes that are introduced in Infinity 2. So we're just going to continue to push it, you know, and just keep telling stories. I was when I was in high school, I started my own comic, you know, just as a high schooler, obviously nothing serious, but it was like a 6-page comic I came up with. I drew some little pages and thought it was real cool. And those heroes were really kind of dear to my heart. I'm like, man, I got to bring those guys back, you know, because I thought they were really cool. So I'll be introducing them as we go with the whole Cape series, you know, because again, they're all going to come out of this one city, you know, and then as everybody in our stable of writers continues to develop their stories, you know, they'll continue to just overlap, and we'll have some side team ups and all these characters to keep working together. So we're just excited with what we've got as far as just our own little network and continuum of heroes, because we think that all of them have fantastic stories, because we're authors first. So they have great stories. And then now if we can just mix that with the visuals and give people some eye candy, man, the sky will be the limit at some point, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry. I've been sitting here listening so long that I've lost my voice from being stagnant, so bear with me. Pardon me. What are some of the challenges that you run into? I mean, of course, you know, the creative process, you sometimes getting in a rut and things like that, but I guess the logistics. I mean, you're coordinating with a handful of people to get this finished product, all the way down to the finished physical copy.
Right.
What are some of those hurdles that tend to happen often, and things that you're learning as you go?
Yeah. Trust in the process has been a lot harder than I thought. Not for me, really, because I'm, again, as an artist, I give people visual freedom. You know, hey, here's my characters, here's my panels. As long as you kind of just do everything I need in that panel, your artistic choices, I'm going to give you autonomy with that. I'm not going to say, oh, well, you know, his muscle, you know, his biceps should have looked like this. I'm not going to be that picky. So as long as you're just authentic to the design of where I want to be, and we're continually doing that, and we're not cutting corners from page to page, where I think you give me a page that looked like an 8 out of 10, and all of a sudden you're trying to just throw like a 3 out of 10 just to kind of get through the creative process. I'm fine with that. Some of the challenges are sometimes, you know, you turn over the work to the author and they're like, oh, well, he doesn't really look like that. I'm like, well, you know, you got to give him a little bit of creative freedom, you know, because that's what they did. You trusted them to have that, to work on your story. And it's not like you can draw it, you know, so as long as it still looks good, you got to live with it. I mean, you can look at tons of comics. I mean, I don't care who did it, whether it's Marvel or DC. Not every page is fantastic, you know, and some of those little panels, you know, if it's not really a focus on that character, they're kind of in the background, it's going to look a little sketchy, you know, as opposed to when you give these opportunities. What I did with the Broken series is that the novel is so emotional and it's so character driven out of this first person narrative that I really wanted emotion to come across in the comics. So a lot of my stuff is about these close-ups that you get of the characters where they're like, you know, pointing and talking, they're crying, you can see their eyes are bloodshot, and a lot of the angles in which you kind of become a director when you do comic panels, because you're like, well, where am I shooting this from? Is it top down? Is it floor up? Is it over the shoulder? Is it a wide shot? Is it a close-up shot? And so I used a lot of variation with how these camera angles were in this story to really set the tone for the conversations of these characters, where the one character, Dr. Greg, is in a wheelchair. So sometimes, and if somebody's talking to him and there's an argument he's having with the main character, Kisa, rather than over the shoulder, I went from the floor up from his wheelchair. Like if he's looking down and he's looking up and she's in his face like this, I want that emotion and that tone to come across on that page. So I'm just shooting it that way in my mind, and then it's coming out on the panel. So to answer your question, a lot of it is just the logistics of really. I do a great job of time management because I'm juggling a lot because I'm still the CEO of Cosby Media Productions, still putting out books and book trailers and getting books to the editors, and the editors get them back, and I got to get them to the office and say, hey, get this back to me when you're ready. And I still have to work on the book covers because all of our book covers I design. I tell the authors, what do you want? And then I work with the artists to put together the book covers, And so I'm doing quite a bit as far as all of that. But this has been a learning process, really learning how to do comics. And I'm really, really grateful with the printer that we use because they've made this seamless,
Mm-hmm.
And well, how do I do this? I put this all in a zip drive and I send it to you, and they're like, yep. And then we list it out and they send you a digital proof, and you go, okay, well, no, that page should be here and that page should be there. And I send it to the author, say, hey, look at these. Is this the flow of your comic? Because I don't know. I don't have time to go read your comic and figure out all these pages in the right place. And then they'll be like, yep, that's it. And then we get it signed, sealed, and delivered, and then the comics come in the boxes, and we're just excited to finally get it in our hand.
Very cool. I felt that way when I recorded an album and had it printed to CD, right? It's like you get the physical copy and it's like, the finished result.
Right.
Now to get this thing to move out of here and break even at least. So that was my peril anyway, as a musician. But, for anybody who may be aspiring to do what you do, do you have any, words of wisdom, things of that sort? I know that the book you showed with the art of comic writing is a very cool resource, but a big piece like music, you've got to put your fingers on the instrument and make it happen. What other pieces have you picked up along the way that you would impart on others?
I think one of the main things is really to have a team of people who are supportive, because there's going to be a lot of challenges, and you're going to really not want to do it like, oh my God, we got to do that now, So I've met a lot of great indie comic companies, because it was my learning curve trying to learn about comics. So Fantasy Art Studios, like I said, they've already got 2 in the Fierce series. They've done some other books as well, so they were a good resource of trying to figure this whole thing out. I also work with Lee Giles and About Time Comics. I've seen them a lot of things, and they've done the Godson series, which I was a huge fan of. And then, like I said, Tyler helped me out with just getting the name. So when we went into social media, if you want to get your work out, you've got to have a presence, because when you post things, man, you'd be surprised how many people just come and give you love, and they'll like stuff, and they'll go down your page and they'll just like everything. And then they'll message you and say, hey man, you guys are doing good. Keep it up. And that's what keeps motivating you. Because then you say, man, we're not just thinking our stuff looks good. People actually like it, So you've got to be in that social media set. If you're trying to do things like this, especially because I knew comic books were big, but I didn't realize how much people in the indie scene were willing to support comics. Like people, like, you don't have to be like, you think I'm like, oh man, I'm up on a comic, nobody's gonna, they just want all the Marvel stuff in DC. And people tell me all the time, hey, I'm just looking for something new. Thanks a lot. I like that. I like that your stuff is new. This is a whole new story I haven't read before,
Mm-hmm.
So I've relished in that, okay, well, we got something new. Check this out, check this out too. Read the books, figure out where it all started from. So you can only get that with social media, because we don't have brick and mortar stores anymore that we're going to and trying to sell these things out of. Yes, we partner with comic company, comic book stores, and we got some local folks here that I'll be there this time, not as an author selling superhero books, but I'll actually be selling comics for First Comic Saturday in May. But yeah, you've got to get out to social media, man. You got to meet people, you got to talk, and that's where you'll find all your artists, you'll find all your inkers, and you'll find all your letterers and people who are really just hungry for work and who have a ton of talent, so it gives them an opportunity to be out there as well. So when I post things, I'm talking about who did the art, because I want those people to get more work even after they're done working with us.
Beautiful. That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So if a comic company or a comic book store would want to get your books, how do they go about doing that?
Their best bet is they can email the company at info@cosbymediaproductions.com, or they can just, when they go to the website for Cosby Media Productions, they'll see contact us, which is like the whole web letter thing. They could send an email in there. And then what we would like to do with them is as they make their purchase order through us, then we will run that through the printer and then get those comics out to them. What I didn't do the first time around, just kind of getting this thing going, is I didn't have a lot of alternate covers. But with Broken, with it being like I say, based in this whole dystopian world where you've got factions of hoarders, you've got the establishment, and you've also got the zombies, what I call ashers. There's going to be 3 variants to the covers. So if comic companies like, hey, we want that variant, they just got to tell us, so that way they're selling just that one variant at their store. And we could even go as far as doing some of the foil covers or the holographic covers. Again, it's our learning curve figuring out that, hey, if you guys want these special covers, you just let us know. We'll make that happen. So Broken will have 3 different variants that are going to be exciting. So as we go forward and we do more comics, then we'll do that. But I wanted every comic to kind of have its own artistic style, and I think we were successful with that. When you showed those pictures earlier, Steve, of the images that I sent you with the comics, when people see those comics, they're going to see a different art style. And then Menzuo having the wraparound cover, I thought was cool. All the comics will have the Infinity 7 symbol on the back if they don't have the wraparound cover, so people will understand what Infinity 7 is all about as well. And it's just going to bounce you around, because in the novels we have, in the back of the novels, we have pictures of the books that are all in the same series. And in the back of the comics, we have all the novels that kind of started the story. So people just be able to jump in and just bounce around and just, read whatever you like. Visually you see it and you like it, go back and read the stories.
Yep. I'm going to put the images back up there again. Mm-hmm. We've talked about a lot. I mean, you've talked about a lot of these books, but I want to clarify it for those who are watching or listening. I'm going to put the picture up and give you a quick chance to do an elevator pitch for each one of them, so they can distinguish the stories that you're talking about. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So that's Menzuo. War at Home. I think it was so funny because I wrote the cape first. I was kind of like first out the gate. I got my comic written and I shared it with the other 3 authors, and everybody's like, "Man, that was really good." And I remember Keyshawn was like, he wrote like he started writing the story for Menzuo, and then he like, "Look, man, Braxton, I just scrapped my entire comic because I was like, I got to elevate my game. Like, your comic was so good. He really loved it, so he wanted to up the ante." And then inside this comic, I'm like, at first, just the cover itself just captures you. There's a lot of chaos going on. And then, of course, the title is War at Home. So what they had to be bringing it. And then when when I started reading the comic, I'm like, you got giants in here? Like you really just went all out. He's like, hey, I had to put it all in there, man. I had to kind of keep up with you. So, so War at Home was really, the cover to me is just amazing. Because you've got Menzuo at the bottom there, and then you've got Lucio and Desmorose, which are we call them the twin powers, because they basically they have the power symbols, 2 different variations of the power symbols on their chest, the green guy and the blue guy. And so they're like his sidekicks, like they're like all brothers from the same planet, Exorbio. And then you've got some of the other characters who were introduced, especially in if you look at the Warrior's Destiny, you'll see some of these characters in this one as well, who were introduced in there. So this book, elevator speech, is chaos times chaos times chaos. It really starts from page 1 and you've got this whole humans kind of protesting these superheroes. They don't want anybody on the planet anymore at this point. They're tired of it. They know they're kind of like aliens. So you're having this whole kind of an X-Men vibe where it's like, mutants against humans thing. But then when things spark off and we got these giants coming along with some of the old demons, some of the old enemies, the pirate warriors who kind of rear their head, against Menzuo, then everybody's like, oh, yeah, we do kind of need you guys. So it's real chaotic. And then there's a huge plot twist at the end. When I read it, I was like, I've read all 4 of your novels. I never knew this existed. And he was like, oh, yeah, I'm bringing it. So he's already working on book 5, too. So, yeah, Menzuo is really, really cool. I think people are going to enjoy this one thoroughly. So this is Bark. As you can see, Bark is a half man, half dog. But he's got 2 partners in crime here. He's got Snow, who is the female with the ice. And we've also got Dash, which is the speedster. And his story kind of moves about with the whole lightning flash kind of imagery throughout the comic. And this one's called Power Struggle. So again, it's really about, okay, heroes against the establishment of Earth, plus the enemies who are really trying to take everybody down. So, power kind of going against power here, where, the establishment of Earth is still trying to flex their muscles and say, hey, we're going to control X, Y, and Z. There's a group of heroes, which a coalition that Bark is a part of, called the UHC, the United Heroes Consortium. And they're kind of like what you would imagine, like the Justice League. And they're trying to find a balance. There's been 3 novels in the Bark series already written. So they're trying to find this whole balance of, well, where do we stand now? After 3 books, we got these 3 story arcs that have come and gone. Now who's really in control? And of course, the government doesn't want anybody to dictate anything other than themselves. So that's really where we kind of get to in Bark Power Struggle. There's really they're having a difficult time of establishing who's in control here. And if people really want the synopsis on all these stories, we're sharing them on the page. Steve, if you bring it up, when they go to CosbyMediaProductions.com and they go to publishing, under the publishing tab, it says Starchild Comics, and that's where they actually get a peek at all the artists who worked on the comics. And eventually we're going to end up putting the book synopsis on there as well, so they can get a full picture of where the stories are going in each one of these. We did it on the Kickstarter with the synopsis, so everybody had a very basic idea, a premise of what each one of these stories was, where it was going. So they will all have, like, none of these comics have ended after this first book, so they're all going to have these small little series that go along with the storytelling.
Yeah, and if you go to Kickstarter and just search Starchild Comics,
Yep.
you can pull that up, and it's nice because there's interviews with each of you talking about the book. So if you want to dig in a little further, there's more info for you there.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to number 3, Cape.
So that's mine. Kind of started off, and again, when Bruno sent me this cover, I almost wanted to cry. Like, geez, this is like so gorgeous, And so, these guys kind of tossed it up a little bit. Paladin and Thief, like I said, they're on a quest to find out what happened to Blur. And then they kind of have to go up against a couple of space pirates. And then it finally ends with coming face to face with Ghazi. So in this place called Hellfire. And so I'm really excited. I just want people to read this one, because I think the artwork in here is like page by page is just, again, it's my personal stuff. So it just blows me away what Bruno was able to do with it. And I wish I could take full credit, because I'm like, yeah, that's exactly how I wanted it to look. It's not true. I couldn't even think of the art looking this good, when he first handed it to me. But I'm proud, because obviously the design of everybody was mine from top to bottom. So I was like, well, at least that's how I wanted them to look when he did it, So I think Hellfire is, it's going to continue this story. It'll take us right into Infinity 2 and then bounce us back out again with the second book of Hellfire. So I'm just excited to get it going. We're working on the outline of Infinity 7 Part 2 now, and that's going to probably be out before the end of the year, that novel. So once people kind of get a chance to ingest all of this superhero, supernormal goodness, they'll be ready for the next book in that series as well. And then we'll bounce back with our next Kickstarter probably towards the beginning of 23 to get the next batch of comics out for everybody.
Will Infinity have time travel?
Yes.
So have you? I was wanting to ask this earlier because earlier, we were reading those copies you gave us, and it's she's not where, she's when.
That's
and I'm
right.
just thinking, oh God, now we've got timelines and all that. So how do you juggle making a mess of things? Because if you do, people online will let you know you've screwed
absolutely.
up the timeline or the theory of all that. So how do you juggle that?
With time travel, time travel gets convoluted when people use it as a gimmick. Like, oh, I got nothing else left, so let's just go back in time and stop everything. And I don't want to do that. The time travel that I like to do is because I did this with the Star-Crossed Saga, books 1, 2, and 3, and it was really about meeting yourself. William had to fight this enemy who was so strong, because I kind of came up with this whole time, and half a time. So basically, it's like those are 3 versions of you. There's an advanced you. There's a time where you're in your own, like you now, and then there's a half a time, which is you in the past. And if you can somehow actually kill or destroy those other versions of yourself, you become more powerful. So he had to do that. And I know it sounds kind of crazy, but it became a very emotional story. Can you imagine running into your older self and realizing that you may have to kill yourself, or run into your baby form, and how do you murder a baby, kind of a thing? So Williams really put through the emotional ringer of making decisions with that. But in this case, the time travel is not going to be about bouncing back and forth, because I always say, like, okay, yeah, you can always keep going back and changing. It's more like forward, and it'd be more like just getting to wins, like you said, more than I need to go to the future. It's like, well, I need to go to a win in order to solve. And I think it's more about where is somebody right now in a win, rather than traveling and I need to go to 2068. I'm not trying to do that. It's okay, time is a continuum. We've been on this call for about an hour and 18 minutes. So I think there's a me who was at an hour 17. What is he doing now? You know what I mean? So it's about location. So I'm locating somebody in a time continuum rather than traveling. So I try to keep it very vanilla, so that people don't ding me and say, oh, well, you know what? If that's the case, then why don't you just go back and kill, Ghazi before he did anything? So it's not about that. Ghazi's in a time which is between life and death. And he's sitting there and he's happy to be there, because he grows more and more powerful by trapping people before they actually cross over. And that's really what he's doing. So he's a little upset that they're coming to his world to throw off what he's been doing for this long. So eventually, as we continue with Hellfire, you'll see where he's going with his intention. Because again, an antagonist is more intriguing when they have their own objectives and they're not just, I just want to destroy the world, I just want to blow everything up. It's more he has a goal and he has a master plan, and that master plan just has to be in opposition of the master plan of the heroes. And as long as that happens, they're almost like running neck and neck to try to accomplish the same thing, but in a different way. And it makes Ghazi actually a very cool character, where we just kind of put him out more of a savage in this first one. As we start to really dive in deep about what's Ghazi's end game, I think people are going to actually like him, in some respects. And this is Metatron Terra at the Track. I'm getting the initial images on this. Like I said, we're about 60% through, and I'm really excited because I think as an author, if you can put some of yourself in your stories, then you become the expert, because what you write about, you need to be an expert in. So if you know yourself, then obviously you can write this all day and nobody can really challenge you. So Lawrence told me from the beginning, he said, it was so funny. We did that. The artist drew the image of the Ford down there, the car, and the grill was different. and he was like, I hate to be a stickler, but I really need that grill to look like this. And he sent me an image. I'm like, what is the grill of a car? Why is that important? But that was a piece of him. He really felt like that's his favorite car, and it needed that. And if he had a chance to put that in one of his comics, he wanted to put that car specifically for that reason, that he wanted his main characters to drive. So as you see in the background, there's a track there. So a lot of this takes place at the track. Metatron is a really cool character because he's a young boy who gets these powers. And he actually has that blade in his hand that you guys can see, and the mystical blade. And his character continues to develop more powers as the novel series goes on. And he even has like a dog who has like special powers. And so in this comic, he says, well, actually it was in his fourth novel, Metatron took on a whole new kind of costume vibe where he's like a little bit Matrix, a little bit what's the guy from Mortal Kombat, Raiden kind of a vibe. So he kind of pulled it like a little bit of a martial arts kind of a look. So all of this stuff just happens, this crazy action happens at the track where, they're up here race car driving, and of course enemies show up at the most inopportune time. So now Metatron has to not only fight off the enemies, but he actually has to protect everybody around him too. So he becomes that titular hero that we always talk about, where he's putting the needs of everybody else above himself, because he wanted to win the race, but he obviously has to stop that while making sure that everybody else is safe as well. So I'm looking forward to this one because it's the same artist who did Menzuo, but I think he's partnering with a different colorist. So it has this real kind of noir kind of color scheme going on that I'm just really, really excited about because I love the vibe. So it really brings on an, even though it's the same art style, just the difference in color gives it its own identity. So if people want to go to Starchild Comics on IG, they'll get a chance to see some of the artwork that I just shared on Friday from Metatron. And of course, they'll see all the other artwork. We've got like over 60 posts where people can see what we were working on, like some of the story, some of the progression where we go from pencil, then we go to ink, then we go to finished ink, then we go to color, then we go to a final page with lettering. So they'll actually get a chance to see a lot of that stuff going on. So it's really, really cool.
Fantastic. And like I said, Monday and I had a chance to read 2 of those books, and we both enjoyed those quite a bit. And we would just ask anybody out there who is interested in something different to give it a chance. Last year, we had A Wave Blue World on, another small publisher, and they've created some amazing work, and people miss out if they just want to go to DC and Marvel. But I think people should check out the Cosby Media Productions dedicated superhero universe.
Thank you.
Boys, do you have any last questions for him? We've kept him now for almost an hour and a half.
I can't think of anything.
I feel like.
Go ahead, Monday.
Yeah, I just say I think if we don't know it all by now, I think we weren't paying attention. You got to seem to have a good handle on everything, and I reading what we read, kind of like I felt like I was dropped in the middle of something. I'm like, man, I want to know what happened to get us here. So yeah, might be checking some of that stuff out.
Very cool.
Excellent.
I think Steve, we don't hear Steve.
Yeah, I don't hear Steve. He's
sorry, I was muted.
For the best.
Yeah, I just was saying if people want to get that, they need to go to cosbymediaproductions.com/store, and you can pick up those novels, pick up when are the comics actually available to purchase?
If they want to pick up the novels and the comics now, they're actually on the Cosby. Those 2, Menzuo and the Cape, are available. We'll ship those out to you as soon as they place the orders. And like I said, the other 2, we'll have all 4 of them ready by the end of the month. And what we'll do is we'll actually, like I said, if people just go to find us on Instagram and they follow us, then they'll see all the updates. We're going to have trailers coming out soon for the comics and all the links and whatnot. So they'll get a chance to really be connected with what we're doing.
Are you on Twitter as well?
Yes. So let me see. I'll pull up Twitter. Twitter is just at Starchild Comics. And then Instagram is, like you said, Starchild_Comics. And if they go to Facebook, it's the same, Starchild_Comics.
Perfect.
All right. I want to make sure people can find you because you don't want to miss out on these new products. Anything you want to share that we have not been able to speak about so far, Mr. Cosby?
Well, I think that's it. I mean, we're just excited. This is such a great venture for me, and it takes me back to my childhood of wanting to do a comic when I was a kid and never thinking I could do it. And now to finally get, and what I'm most proud about is that I feel like we didn't put out junk. I feel like the stories are very good in the intention of driving people from one page to the next. I feel like that was done well. I feel as if the dialogue wasn't on the nose. I'm real technical, so this type of stuff, when we write screenplays and everything, it has to be done a certain way. So I feel like I kept that very authentic to even transitioning to the comics, and I feel like the art was really, really good. So as far as people investing in us and come into our world and being a part of it, I think they're going to get a quality product across the board from not just the storytelling, but also the art. And I think it's just going to give them an opportunity to really see what we're about. So I'm excited. I'll be at Atlanta Comic-Con on the 18th, 19th, and 20th with a booth there selling and signing my stuff. But I'm also doing two panel discussions on that Saturday. One will be transitioning from novels to comics, which is what we've done, and also the power of the page. So basically, I'll be breaking down all the structural techniques of writing a comic page from panel to panel and how we do that. So people will get a chance to really kind of learn the art of what we've been able to put together. So I'm excited.
I would agree about, you had mentioned, the direction, and I thought the page composition was really done well, and it did flow nicely from page to page. So I think you definitely accomplished that.
Thank you.
Yeah, everything that we saw, which was, a very small sampling, it looked professional. I mean, good quality.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Cosby, for coming on the show tonight.
And thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. This is great.
Absolutely. So this is out tonight. Tomorrow it'll be available for podcast at Wanderings and Wool Gathering. So you can find Wanderings and Wool Gathering on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, the Kokomo Lantern, Stitcher, Castbox, and SoundCloud. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe. For music, movies, and comics reviews, head over to wanderingsandwoolgathering.com. We will see you next week when we review the latest from Ghost and we play Paul's Challenge. Until then, bye now.
Goodbye.
Thanks.
Do we have outro music, Paul? Oh, yeah. This one lasts an hour, right, Paul?
2 hours.
Sweet.